to another LIS 198 webinar series, a series where we discuss and dissect the various concepts and aspects of digital scholarship and how they can be applied in how you approach education and research. My name's David Viray, an undergraduate student from the School of Library and Information Science at UP Diliman, and in this episode of our LIS 198 webinar series, we'll be discussing the concept of guerrilla research and its various use cases and applications. So first of all, before we can go ahead and discuss guerrilla research, let's set the context of what guerrilla research is and the environment of where guerrilla research stands. So what is this traditional research mindset? So if we take a look at how research is approached in a scholarly background and a scholarly mindset, an academic mindset, it's generally something that is externally funded. So these funds come from the government, from higher institutions. Generally they require a traditional output for this research that you're conducting. So in the form of a scholarly journal, in the form of a publication in a book, for example. And generally this type of content that's found in this traditional research often requires a certain size in order for it to become valid, in order for it to achieve that externally funded status, and in order for it to be published in these traditional outputs. And of course, the overall goal for a lot of these people is to gain recognition and tenure so that they can continue performing this research and continue doing this. And this creates a problem when we introduce the concept of the internet, of digital scholarship, as there's a host of possibilities that are being prohibited by remaining wedded solely to the view of staying true to the books, as the internet has brought just so many new innovations and ways to make this research process a lot easier. And the idea of taking this process and sort of going against the grain, not following the procedures and trying something different, can generally be described as guerrilla research. So guerrilla research is something that doesn't require a giant team. It can be done by one or two researchers. It doesn't rely on spending months or years collecting data for yourselves. It relies on existing open data, information, and tools. And often the results of this research are fairly quick to realize. It isn't something that you spend years pondering over, years modifying, editing, revising in order to produce a final outcome. And this quickness is often represented by how it's disseminated. It's disseminated through blogs, through social media, and things of that sort, these Web 2.0 tools. And further on in this webinar series, we'll be discussing some of these Web 2.0 tools that you can use to help further your guerrilla research if you decide to pursue this sort of type. And it doesn't require permission. You're not getting funding from a higher institute or a higher company, that sort of thing. It's all your initiative, and no one can really tell you no. And I think that's one of the things that makes guerrilla research quite great. And this ties back in to our concept of digital scholarship. So the idea that everything is the idea that, for example, the scholarship isn't really tied necessarily to physical means, and that there's a way to practice it to enhance how we approach scholarship using modern day tools and technologies. And speaking of modern day tools and technologies, we'll be going over the individual aspects that are comprised of digital scholarship in the context of research, and the sort of tools that you can use on the internet that can help enhance the idea of guerrilla research. So let's start with the idea of open information. So I'm sure a lot of you are already familiar with how to use the internet to obtain open information. Doing a quick Google search brings you tons of results. You have information resources such as Wikipedia, you have Google Scholar, for example. But let's say you're conducting guerrilla research. You want to do something that is narrow. You're looking for something specific, and it's something recent and modern. And a lot of the time, it's kind of hard to navigate the internet to find the most recent and up-to-date things. You can try to scroll through Twitter, check the latest hashtags. You can try to find the Facebook algorithm isn't exactly the best at providing the latest up-to-date information, nor does it help you find focused information. And here's where the first tool that I want to introduce you comes in. So the tool I'm going to introduce to you now is Google Alerts. So let's go ahead and take a quick look at what Google Alerts is. So here's Google Alerts, and one of the things that works the best in regards to Guerrilla scholarship, Guerrilla Research rather, is that it lets you find exactly what you're looking for, exactly what topic you're looking for. So for example, let's say we want to do a narrow search for a paper on let's say something extremely specific, like let's say something like COVID. That's a very recent topic, and right away we see all the various news headlines that are pertaining to COVID. We can see websites, so CNN, Africa News, and we can keep going. Okay, and what's great about Google Alerts is that not only does it show you what's currently available, you can create an alert on the topic of COVID, and whenever something new pops up, whenever something happens about that particular topic, you'll immediately get a notification. You can set it up to be through your email, for example. You can set it up through your phone, and what time you want to see it. So let's say you want to designate a specific time of the day to just go through all the information instead of having to search for it yourself. Google Alerts will help you accomplish that goal, and this is something that's really useful for Guerrilla Research when you're trying to navigate the complex nature that is the internet with all the information, all the websites, and Alerts just really helps you narrow and streamline your process. Okay, and so yeah, Google Alerts, very quick tool, very easy to set up, and I think it's something that all digital scholars should be using. So we can go ahead and hop back to our presentation as we discuss the next concept of digital scholarship and a tool that could help in accomplishing that. And this is going to be the idea of open publication. So as we mentioned earlier, traditional means of publication is a very tedious task. It's an arduous task, especially if you want to create your own journal. Like, it's not about just the process of being selected to write for a journal is one thing, but the process of creating an entirely new journal is something that's just extremely difficult as well. And because there's so many things to do, such as negotiating with publishers, trying to find an appropriate business model, trying to determine if there's even a market for the sort of journal you're trying to push. For a lot of the cases, the market is just too small, or there's just no interest. And this is where the idea of open publication comes in. Not having to rely on a journal, on an established journal, to publish your own thoughts. And this really ties in with the idea of guerrilla research, where you want to push everything out, you want to get all the information out. And while traditionally the idea of open publication has been pushed towards blogs and stuff, I do have to say that there are a lot more common tools that people use nowadays in order to help push forward this idea of open publication. And in this example, I'm going to show you one of these tools, and I'm pretty sure some of you are already very familiar with it or have stumbled across this tool in a lot of your web browsing regularly. And this tool is going to be Medium. And I think Medium's a very underutilized tool, as a lot of people just do not use Medium to the full extent. Not only can you search for the same thing, let's say we're looking for COVID, right? We can look exactly we can look at other people's blog posts. For those of you who don't know, Medium is essentially an open blog, which is a lot more narrow in topics, and we can see that all of these stories regarding COVID, which can greatly help your research, it's essentially an upgraded version of a blog, and just like a blog, you can easily publish your own findings. Let's say you have your own finding, you can easily tell your own story and immediately publish it. And the great thing about Medium is that there's this social networking aspect, this Web 2.0 aspect, this collaboration aspect, where while traditionally you'd attend conferences and have to rely on working with colleagues from previous collaborations, Medium is another avenue for you to really get your work out there and get to know people in the industry or people with similar goals in mind in regards to their research. Okay, so that's open publication, and we're going to quickly touch on another way that you can use the idea of digital scholarship in your Guerrilla Research, and that's going to be open data. So what do I mean by open data? So one of the ways, one of the more initial ways that traditional means have been accepting the idea of digital methods is by the idea of digital scholarship. One of the big things being the idea of openness is through open data sets, using information that's available publicly and for everyone to find. And a lot of people don't realize just how much information is public and something that can greatly help your research. For example, let's take a look at this website real quick. This is datagov.ph, and they have data sets for almost anything, almost every single topic from almost all the government agencies. Let's say you want to check out the public infrastructure. We can go ahead and look through this, and here there's a comparative nationwide summary of bridges by type, and we can see all the various details. We can see the length and number, and there's just so much information that's not being used and that's readily available. And this is one of the aspects of digital scholarship, being aware of this openness. And yeah, so there's the open data as something that you can use to enhance your Guerrilla scholarship. So going back to the slides, let's summarize the idea of traditional research. So traditional research is generally it's compared to like the other aspects of digital scholarship, research tends to be the most conservative, and there's a good reason why, as research is often the core, the fundamental, the starting point for a lot of the other aspects of digital scholarship. So it needs to be done correctly. It's highly valued, and it's valued in almost every single profession. There's the idea of quality and reliability being key, regardless of the duration it takes, of the means it takes. But that doesn't mean that to say that Guerrilla Research, the idea of something quick, isn't bad, as Guerrilla Research isn't necessarily meant to supplant traditional approaches, but instead act in addition and complementary to current means. The fact that it's extremely quick and the fact it doesn't cost anything means that, if anything, means that it allows you to make sufficient insights for informed strategic decisions. So from the Guerrilla Research, you can further take it if you desire to do so, and turn it into a traditional publication. So Guerrilla Research is there for you to make the better decisions. It's meant as an alternative for you to do something better, do something different. And yeah, that was my quick summary of what Guerrilla Research is, the various tools that you can use to help you in conducting your Guerrilla Research. And I hope that the websites I've shown you today are something that you can apply in your own research and something that you'll find useful later on.